Lee, Tina Liebling.
Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined with Tina Liebling. She is in the House. However, she is running for governor of Minnesota. So thank you so much for joining us, Tina. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And guys, everybody watching will bring this up again, but the caucus for Minnesota is actually Tuesday. So we're kind of down to the wire for this. So please send invites to the show to any of your friends or family in Minnesota. This was very interesting. I was looking into the your current position with the House, and it states that you're a member of the DFL, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. I have never heard of that. Can you kind of explain?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Minnesota's the only state where the Democratic Party is called the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, or DFL, we all call it. And that's just for historic reasons. The Democratic Party merged with the Farmer and Labor parties, which actually were more progressive parties. So, I think, it's just really historic. And every so often we sort of struggle about whether to keep the name or not. We, just like a lot of places, the rural areas tend to go more Republican. And so there's always this kind of struggle about, how do we get the F back in DFL? Are we engaging with the farmers? How do we get the L back in DFL? Are we engaging with labor? So,
Oh, okay. So it really is just another way to say Democratic Party.
Yes.
I see.
We call ourselves Democrats or DFLers. It's really interchangeable.
Oh, yep. Okay. Because I know there are so many parties, and that's why I was like, this is amazing because she's won so many times in this party, but it's not really a party. So that's impressive. Okay, so that's clarified. Right. So you have actually been in the House since 2004?
Right. I'm in my 7th term in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Right.
Wow. Yep. So why did you decide to change your position or what have you to governor? What convinced you to move on higher in that regard?
Yeah. Well, I'm really not somebody who ever thought, oh, I'm running for higher office. In fact, I was kind of drafted to run for office in the first place. It wasn't really on my radar screen. But I turned a red district to blue when I was first elected. In fact, when they hadn't had a Democrat or a DFLer since people started running on party labels in my district. But I always ran as a bold progressive. I've always been a progressive. I never, sometimes when people flip a district, they sort of pretend to be a moderate because they think they need to do that to get reelected. I never did that. I just always was a progressive. So 2016 happened. I supported Bernie. A lot of Minnesotans supported Bernie in our was here. And then we have an open seat for governor this next time for 2018. We've had a Democratic governor for the last 2 terms, 8 years. And we're really worried about what's going to happen in the next election because our House and Senate are right now majority Republican. So we could go the way of Iowa or the way of Wisconsin if we lose our governor's race. So after 2016, just like a lot of people felt like, I got to do more. I've got to step it up. I can't just let things go the way they're going. I felt that way too. It's kind of like we all have 2 choices. We can either sort of hide under the table and say, oh my God, I hope somebody fixes this mess. Or we can get more involved than we've been. And so for me, it was just like, I can't just keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, I've been fighting this fight for a long time, but I thought that the time just really called out for me to step forward. Because I looked around, frankly, women do this a lot. I looked around And I said, who can I find that's a progressive to run for governor? And so I asked some of my friends, and they didn't want to do it. And then I just said, wow, for years I've been telling women to stop giving excuses and just run. So I thought, well, maybe I better take my own advice and just
Yeah.
do it. So that's what I did.
That's what I tell people because, I hear a lot. There's no one running who I agree with as much as I'd want to. Well, I know someone you'd agree with 100%. It's amazing how many Bernie crowds have come out, and just thousands have started running locally and everything because of, the movement that was started. You actually had to open up for Bernie?
I had an amazing opportunity to be the opening speech for Bernie when he came to my small city here in southeast Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota. So it was amazing. It was really the highlight of my political career. And out there, and we've used it in the campaign because our thought was that, there's all of these Minnesotans who came out and supported Bernie. If even a fraction of them come out to support me, I would win. There are 6 candidates running for in the nomination process now, 6 Democrats. And I'm the only one who was a Bernie supporter. And I'm really the only one who's talking about the things that Bernie talks about. And that's, I tell people this isn't about Bernie. This is about the issues that Bernie was talking about and that are still issues about the economy, about what's happening to ordinary people, about how wealth and power are being concentrated. That's what we've got to be talking about. And if we're not, all the so-called safe candidates, I just think we don't know what a safe candidate is. The person with all the money is not necessarily the safe candidate. We just saw that happen. So,
exactly.
You got to go out there and talk to people about what's happening in their lives. That's how people are going to get engaged.
Absolutely. And when I was looking into that, it said on when I just Googled your name, and I was kind of picking tidbits. It said supported Bernie during 2016 primaries, breaking with state party leadership. So is that uncommon for someone who, to actually stand up and say, look, I know all you guys are supporting someone else, but I'm going to put my support behind this person. Is that uncommon for Minnesotans?
Well, I've always been somebody who does what I think is the right thing, even if sometimes everybody doesn't agree with me yet. So, I don't worry about who other people are supporting. I worry about who I think is right and who resonates with me. And it was sort of unfortunate that our party leadership here and kind of most of the sort of party establishment supported Hillary, and our party chair really wasn't supposed to be supporting anybody, but he was. And so, I made it very clear what I thought about that. I think after the fact, he found that, he kind of wished he hadn't done that, and he's kind of committed to not doing the same thing again. So I think that dynamic kind of happened in a lot of places, didn't it?
Well, how dare both of us for supporting a man over a woman to begin with?
Right. That's right. That's
right. How many times did you hear that? I know I heard it a lot.
Oh, yes. Well, right now, right? So here I am, a woman running, and some of the same people who said that now don't really care so much that I'm a woman and somebody else is a man. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. And you said that there were 6 Democratic candidates. And when I was researching you, I saw that you guys did have a debate, which is really rare. I don't interview a lot of candidates who have that opportunity. But the interesting thing was, it said that only 3 out of 6 of you showed up.
Well, actually, we haven't had any real debates because most of these, we go to a lot of forums. And we've been to so many of them. I don't know which one you saw, but usually most of us show up. So we've been at lots of them together, but usually the people who set them up don't actually let us debate each other. They just want everybody to answer the questions. So there's a real effort to kind of keep us from, saying anything bad about each other and all of that. It's kind of, I understand the impulse because, we don't want to go into a general election with somebody that we've beaten up our own, somebody from our own party. But on the other hand, how do you draw out the real differences between people?
Absolutely.
And how do you make sure that candidates can defend themselves in a real election? Because some of these candidates have never had a really serious election Republican candidate.
Right. That's a really good point. I think, it speaks a lot of who's going to kind of, just stand back and allow things to be said. And then people are just going to speak their mind. It can be in a tactful way, but the more they kind of try to stifle voices, the more that the audience may not see those differences. So you're totally right. You were a criminal defense lawyer for let's see, for it looks like you fought for victim rights for criminal defense lawyer. Is that accurate?
Well, a criminal defense lawyer, you're defending the person accused of a crime.
Sure.
But I've been in the legislature now for 13 years. And so
Right.
like I had an award from the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault, for example, because I really believe that, having due process and having a good system gives people confidence that when somebody's actually convicted that they really did the crime. It just has so many ramifications, having a robust defense system is important for racial justice in particular. We've got so many more people of color in our prison system, across the country than their numbers would have you expect. And, that's about not having a good defense in addition to just being about racism and poverty. And, so, I always wanted to fight for the underdog, when I had the opportunity to be a prosecutor, I more thought, well, that's sort of the man, of all the resources working with the cop. I wanted to be fighting for the person who, was the little guy and really needed me.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Do you guys have a lot of for-profit prisons where you live?
Well, in Minnesota, we don't. There's been some effort to open a for-profit prison, and we fought that pretty hard. It's kind of an issue here. But no, in terms of state prisons, we have fought that off because boy, does that take you down a bad path. When you see all the lobbying those prisons do, and, it's just, it's bad enough already with the federal system and with the immigration system, to have these people in these for-profit places is just awful.
And kind of along those lines, how do you feel about marijuana legalization?
So I'm of the 6 Democrats, I'm the one who's I actually have a bill in the legislature in Minnesota to legalize. And so that's been a big issue for me. And one that I hope that people are kind of noticing that I've been a leader on that issue because it has so many different impacts. And now that so many states have an initiative and referendum process, so there's no way for the public to do it without the legislature. So I have a bill that actually would put it on the ballot in Minnesota as a constitutional amendment, which is the only way you can let people vote on things here, and then would have a whole policy that the legislature would put together for if it would pass, that we'd have all the regulation and, the rules about growing and selling and testing it and all that sort of stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's important.
that definitely directly correlates to the for-profit prison and the racist tendencies of incarcerating people of color. So that would, should that be legalized, I think that, we've seen things like that change tremendously when it's legalized in other states. As far as healthcare, I do see that you support universal healthcare.
I'm a big single payer fan.
Single payer.
And yep. And so my district is a clinic in it. And the Mayo Clinic, world famous Mayo Clinic, we call it the WFMC. It's kind of a joke a little bit. But so, they don't support single payer, but I've been a single payer supporter for many, many years. And, now it's boy, with the Trump administration and with the Republican Congress, it's kind of like, what we have, the Obamacare piece, the Affordable Care Act, that was a good step forward. But it's still always, of course, an insurance system and was never going to really solve the problem. And I've always said, okay, but we've got to move forward. We've just got to get the insurance companies out. So that's been one of the things I've worked on in the legislature, because a lot of my time in the legislature, I've been working on health and human services, and it's complicated stuff. I think Minnesota really can move in that direction, even with those. Sometimes the states have to kind of be the leaders on these things, just like on cannabis. The change is going to come through the states, and then maybe the federal government will come along. And I think single payer health insurance will be the same thing. And I'm so thrilled that Bernie is, doing this and now in the Senate. But, we've got to kind of try to push it from both ways.
We do. And, it's so ironic because I am so much for Medicare for all, single payer.
Yeah.
But I work in healthcare, so it's kind of that, that interesting dynamic, because 40 hours a week I am working at an insurance company. So it's kind of like, and I'm very open at my office, so it's humorous, but I see those bills. I see those, I talk to those patients. I know how important it is to have those procedures and medications and things like that covered. So, but it's interesting that I do that all day, and then I have my show, and I'm like, screw insurance companies. It's an interesting dynamic.
That says something really good about you, because a lot of people can't see past their own interest in their, and yet, we have a lot of, right now in this country, there are a lot of jobs that need doing that we don't have people to do them. So, I know it's not like we can take someone, from one job and plop him another, certainly not, but we really need people to do a lot of things. And the bottom line for me is that insurance really isn't a model that fits with healthcare. If you're insuring your house against burning down, it's very rare for a house to burn down, so you can spread the risk. I mean, I'm sure the listeners know all this stuff, and I don't have to say it, but healthcare, since we all need it, overall, it doesn't make sense to have it be this risk thing where you try to shift the risk and pick the people without a risk and all that. It just doesn't make sense at all.
Absolutely. And, I'm not like, Obamacare definitely has a lot of flaws, but I think the number one thing that it did was it took away that pre-existing condition clause, which working in healthcare was just the most painful thing in the world to have to tell people, I'm sorry, you don't qualify because, through no fault of your own, you got in a car accident 3 years ago, or things like that. So I think that's a lot of people's biggest trepidation now with Trump, coming out with all of his anti-healthcare crap, I think people are most nervous about those pre-existing conditions. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. If we can get even one state on board with universal health care, Medicare for all, it will take off. Hopefully California, they're kind of close, but somebody can that's what Bernie was saying the one time, I only need one. And I was like, yes, we only need one. That we can use that as a precedent.
Well, as governor, that will be one of my big priorities, is at least moving us in that direction. Because sometimes I think we have to at least move that way so the public can get an experience of it and say, oh yeah, this works. Let's do some more of it. Let's go more in this direction. I think we can do that even with Trump there.
I do as well. There's something interesting with the Trump dynamic. It's, in so many ways he's pulling us apart, but he's also kind of inadvertently pulling us together and getting a lot of people off their asses who have never been activists or involved before. So I think there's a lot of people getting active. So I think that you're totally right. This is, before Bernie ran, nobody knew what Medicare for all was. It was a fraction of the people who know now. And now it has such huge support because people actually found out, wait, other countries are doing that. We don't actually have to cut our pills in half and things like that. So times definitely are changing and we just have to keep it up.
Well, that's right. And that's one of the great things that Bernie really did for us is, he was not afraid to just lay it out there. This is what we need. This is what people need. And you don't win. In politics, you don't always win. But one of the things that really prompted me to run this year is that so often we see Democrats, we compromise against ourselves before we even start. We think, oh, you really can't raise the minimum wage that high, so we won't even propose what we think people really need. We'll just start with something that we think will be acceptable to the other side. And then that people don't know what we fought for in the first place. So my tendency is to say, look, we got to fight for the things we need. We got to fight for the thing. They have to come to that at the end. So that's success. You have to measure your success where you can sometimes.
Absolutely. We definitely saw that on the debates with, Byrne talking about Medicare for all and Queen Hillary who said, no, that's pie in the sky. Well,
right.
If we, the people, are saying this is what we want, we're the constituents, take our opinion into account because you're supposed to be representing us. So the whole idea of really progressive is people, it's progress. I think a lot of times politicians forget that. So as far as running as a Democrat, after everything that happened in 2016, did you contemplate running as independent or something other than that, or were you automatically going to run Democrat?
Well, if you're really realistic in Minnesota about, really wanting to have any opportunity to really win, you pretty much have to be with one of the major parties. The smaller parties here don't even have major party status right now. So, it's not impossible. We had an Independence Party governor, you might remember, Jesse Ventura. He's still around. Nobody thought he was going to win because he was sort of so outrageous that people said, these other two people are boring. We're going for him. But other than something like that, it's not really that realistic to run as a third party candidate right now. And I'm a Democrat. I mean, I've been in the DFL party for all these years. And you know, this is my state is the state of Senator Paul Wellstone, who was a big political, you know, icon here and somebody that I really modeled my political career after. And, you know, very courageous, very progressive. You know, so I mean, party here, remind ourselves of that a lot of times. Well, it's really clear to me that we, you know, what's that statement about, you know, we either, you know, hang together or we all hang separately. You know, there's all these, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, the Trump administration, they're just trying to divide people. And we are, you know, we have the same interests. We all need good health care. We all need good education for our kids. We all need a living wage. There is no reason to blame and allow other people to divide us and be blaming each other. And so there is a really good, you know, Minnesota has a growing Muslim community. We've had a lot of Somali immigration into Minnesota over the years. And in my legislative district, I actually have a fair number of Somali constituents. Many of them have become Americans. Many of them now have actually grown up and gone to high school here, and they look different, but they sound just like I do. And, you know, so we have a really this wonderful diversity in Minnesota and this energy that immigrants bring in. And a lot of these people are Muslims. And to see them targeted in this way and treated like, you know, treated in that vilified and and stuff invites them to be targeted for violence. That's just horrifying to me. These people are my neighbors, they're friends, and our state is not going to be very successful unless we get everybody to be functioning in the economy. All of our immigrants. So because, you know, like a lot of states, we have this big problem, which is that people are the. It's kind of a moment when we have to decide which way we're going to go on these things. Well, and so if you're asking about advice, that means I have to pick a living person, I guess. Yeah. Well, no, I was going to say Paul Wellstone that I mentioned before. He was a U.S. senator. And, you know, Paul Wellstone, for example, was the only U.S. senator who was running for re-election who voted against the war in Iraq. He was a man who was really known for political courage. He would do the right thing, even if nobody else agreed with him. And he was always about the ordinary person. So he would say, those drug companies, those CEOs, they have all their lobbyists. They don't need me. I'm for the rest of the people. And so that was really inspiring to me. He died a plane crash. I ran, the first time I ran was 2000, and that year, the year that centered in a plane crash and a lot of other pain for, and we were all that, but candidate with him there was so inspiring to me that it really has the rest of my political career. So that's one. And then there, I have some friends. I have some great progressive friends in the Minnesota legislature that I look to, and and support me, and a lot of great progressives in my community. And I get inspiration from the people that I interact with all the time. I mean, to me, the real heroes, the people that I look to, are those people that have difficulty in their lives, and yet they just struggle through. They just keep on keeping on, like the single mom who's working 3 jobs to keep things afloat, but she just does it. She just keeps on keeping on and trying to get her education. And those are the people that really inspire me and that I look to. Yeah. Yeah, so people can start registering at 6:30. The actual caucus starts at 7. Now, there's a couple important things. One is there's a straw poll. It's non-binding, but there's a chance to vote for governor, just, among the Democrats. So that's really just going to be important in terms of, media and things like that. It's not binding. But then it's the beginning of the delegate selection process, which is going to continue, and the actual nominee won't be chosen till June at the state convention. But it's really important for people to go and get themselves elected to be a delegate, which should be pretty easy at this first stage. That's the problem. Caucus system is it really requires people to have put in a lot of time and energy. So that single mom isn't going to be able to participate because she's too busy just running her family and keeping afloat. That's the problem with the system. But if people really want to make change, if they want a real progressive to be on their ballot in November, then they need to go to the caucuses now, which is Tuesday nights starting 6:30 to register. And you can go online to the Secretary of State's website and find out exactly where your caucus is if you need that information. Right, right. Well, I'm running because I have that, kind of, I feel compelled to do it. We like I said at the beginning, where we can kind of hide under the table and hope somebody else will fix the problem. So we can get out there and just do what we can. And none of us have to fix everything, but we do have to do our part. I just think that, we can't just give up. We 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 had a real show of force in 2016. I'll tell you, it has changed the. You can really see it. People in Minnesota are talking about single pay, the big right now in Minnesota. So that just shows you how much change there has been. And I think that we can continue that, but people just have to get out and participate, and not worry if they, if it's their first time, if they feel a little nervous, if they don't exactly know what to do, and just realize that there are going to be lots of people who feel that way too. And there's going to be lots of people to help. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Joy. And so I know I've been seeing the messages that say that your audio is down and stuff. So I don't know if everybody's hearing you. So the question, just to repeat the question in case they couldn't hear you, was sort of what do I want people to take away from the conversation? You know, I'm running because if I wasn't running, there would be no Bernie type of candidate in the race. I mean, there are some people who say they are, but they're really not. And if you really want a bold progressive, and I say I'm a progressive, I mean, there are other progressives, there are people with progressive opinions in the race. I call myself a bold progressive because I actually stand up and fight for the things that I believe in. I'm known for that in the legislature, standing up and fighting for what I believe in. If people want that, then they have to help me because I'm doing everything I can. And I need people to help me by going to the caucus and voting for me and getting themselves elected a delegate. And secondly, it's been really hard to raise money. So I would really appreciate if people would go to my website and contribute. I really want to do it the Bernie way, but it takes a lot of people to give you those small contributions to make this thing work. So those are two things that would be very, very helpful to me. And just to let people know that I'm inspired by them. We have to all inspire each other because this can be really discouraging work. You know, it's a long slog. You don't see immediate results, and there are hard days and there are good days. So we all have to other and realize that sometimes people need a little time and then they come back in. Don't just keep at it together. Sure, absolutely. So my website is tinaliebling.com. It's TINA. And I tell people when I give my little speeches all over the place, here's what I say. If you want a bold progressive for your next governor, remember what TINA stands for. There is no alternative. So that's my first name, Tina. And then my last name is Liebling. It's spelled Liebling, Tina Liebling. So that's my website, tinaliebling.com. And on Twitter, I'm at Tina Liebling. So it's pretty easy. And people can Google me also. If you Google State Representative Tina, you'll probably get me if you forget my last name. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for doing this. All right. We'll keep fighting together. Take care. Okay.